Hi, welcome to Rev'd Up for Sunday, a podcast on the Sunday scriptures from St. Mark's Episcopal Church in New Canaan, Connecticut. I'm Justin Crisp.
I'm Peter Walsh.
I'm Elizabeth Garnsey.
And we are here on the preparing for the second Sunday of Christmas at St. Mark's. In the lectionary, we have chosen a particular path. There are three possible lections in this year in the Revised Common Lectionary, and we have chosen the story of Jesus getting left behind in the temple at the age of 12. I have to say, one of my favorite Christmas movies to watch during this time of year is Home Alone, the story of Kevin McAllister getting left behind when his family goes on vacation.
Nice.
His family ends up at their destination, and everybody's like, "Where's Kevin?" The answer is, he was home. The same was actually true of Jesus. Let's hear the scriptures. A reading from the Gospel of Luke, the second chapter, beginning at the 41st verse. The parents of Jesus went to Jerusalem every year for the festival of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up as usual for the festival. When the festival was ended and they started to return, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but his parents did not know it. Assuming that he was in the group of travelers, they went a day's journey. Then they started to look for him among their relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem to search for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Look, your father and I have been searching for you in great anxiety." He said to them, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my father's house?" But they did not understand what he said to them. Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was obedient to them. His mother treasured all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in years and in divine and human favor. Here ends the lesson. So what do you all make of Jesus home alone?
Well, herein starts the speculation, right? I mean, this is
Mm-hmm.
our only story that we have in the Gospels of Jesus as an adolescent. It's a transitional piece. It gets us from the so-called infancy narratives to Jesus is 30 years old. And we have this little whiz kid. Right? The divine little whiz kid. Prodigy.
Yeah.
I read it, and I must say, 12 years old, what have I been following lately? Charlie Woods. Tiger Woods' son is 12.
Yep.
I'm like, holy smokes. This poor kid.
Growing in wisdom and in years in his own way and in divine and human favor, perhaps. But
Yeah, I mean, 3 days. What were they? I mean, I can't imagine. It took a long time to find him. And, maybe the temple's the last place they looked. And I always wonder where were they searching for 3 days? Did he have a favorite park or, was he hanging out somewhere?
Yeah. Jerusalem in that day wasn't all that big, though. At the Passover,
crazy.
there would have been big crowds. They say as many as 50,000 people descending upon Jerusalem at the time. I don't know where they all slept because there certainly are not 50,000 free beds in Jerusalem.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think it speaks to the tribal nature of the culture that they would trust their friends and family to just all be in the mix and looking after one another's offspring. And, and then they look for him. It's just so shocking. And I think one thing when they get to the temple, I've always kind of chuckled to myself because I relate so well to this reactionary parenting instinct where, all around are like, wow, isn't he smart? And this is so nice. Listen to what he's saying. And these are such good questions. And he's so wise. He's only 12. They're all, and the parents break in, child, why have you treated us like this? They don't even take a moment to see what's happening and say, look at our child. Or, take the distance and let it unfold. And I have asked, I think even in a past sermon or so, what would have happened if they had just paused and let him keep going, and sit down, take a seat, I don't know. It just would have been a whole different story. And but it's so relatable. And
yeah,
totally.
You know, the parents have the role of the reptilian guardians. They have to care for his, you know, his life and limb, and everyone else can just bask in his cuteness or brilliance. You know, I think parents experience that all the time.
Yeah, totally. I love the story because it's so human, like the rest of the Christmas story. I mean, we tend to dress up Mary more than we do Joseph, and dress them up in otherworldly holiness, and not just dress them up in bathrobes for the world's greatest Christmas pageant. But here, they're incredibly human, and I'm interested partly in the fact that their response to Jesus the kid is it is reactionary, but it's also not like, wow, you've broken the rules, you're grounded for 6 weeks, something like that. I mean, they're like talking to him as though he was a 40-year-old, right? Child, why have you treated us like this? Right? Like, who's in charge here in this family system?
Right.
Is it Jesus? Is it Mary and Joseph?
Wow.
And I think they're probably just at their wits' end, right? And so they're like, yes, you have been disobedient, etc. I can't believe that you basically like ran away. But they're like, how could you do this to me? Right? They're probably exhausted. They're spending three days searching for this kid. So I love the fact actually that they're exhausted and that they're at their wits' end because it makes them human. That's what's human about them. And God's doing extraordinary things through these really ordinary people, and they're just as tired as the rest of us. They get just as exasperated as the rest of us. But then the other thing that I love is that they don't seem to get it. They both had angels appear to them, right? So in the Gospel of Matthew, the angel appears to Joseph. In the Gospel of Luke, the angel appears to Mary. If you put the two together, if you do a mashup of these two so-called synoptic Gospels, an angel appeared to both of them and seemed to lay out for them, okay, here's the outline. The child that's going to be born of you is holy. He's going to be called the Son of the Most High, the Son of God. He's going to be, he's going to have the throne of his ancestor David, etc., etc. And Jesus says, did you not know that I must be in my Father's house, the temple, being the house of God, whom he calls Father, etc.? And it says they did not understand what he said to them. And it comforts me a little bit. Like, I don't blame them. I know it's, there's a lot that I don't understand too, even when it smacks me in the face. I'm comforted by the fact that angels basically smacked them in the face with the truth, and they still didn't get it.
Well, I mean, ignorance is a big theme in all of these gospel stories, right? People not getting it, and his parents don't get it, and I don't blame them for not getting it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot happening here on the parental front here, right? So we have father in two different ways.
Right.
Your father and I. So now Joseph gets a little paternity here in this one, right? I mean, there's no. She doesn't say. So your stepfather, or remember how you were conceived, kind of thing. Your father and I, right? And then 2 sentences later we got I must be my Father's house. So we got two different fathers in play here. Jesus, who's he being obedient to? So disobedient to little f father and obedient to big F father here. And Mary's always treasuring all these things in her heart. That's because I don't think she has a clue what to make of it.
Right.
Right. What I mean, it's like you hear these things. We all have these things in life. We take them. We go, oh boy, that's a something. And it goes. And we move it around inside to try to figure out. So I think that what we have here is a funny parenting moment here, or not funny at all for them, funny at all for them,
right?
But for us to look years later, we're like, yeah. I mean, how many times? I mean, anybody who's a parent knows that. Perfect ain't on the menu, and adolescence periodically in different kids brings forth a. Part of the job of adolescence is to break free from your parents, right? This Jung's whole idea about how we become adults is we are nurtured and then we have to break away. Self-differentiation is what he calls it. Yeah. So we have here a major self-differentiation in Jesus. Like, do you not know? I can't believe you don't know. I mean, Jesus lays it on a man, right? Are you kidding me? They call him child, and then he says, why are you searching for me?
Right.
Did you not know that I must? I mean,
silly people. Why are you
silly people? Silly people. That's a silly people response. Like, really silly people.
Ordinary humans.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when someone's a prodigy, it feels like often the stories are of parents being really protective. If they're a pianist or something, like they can't do anything with their hands but play the piano, or like super kind of, this isn't true across the board, but you hear stories of parents having the extra sense of protection and needing to guide. And so, he's 12 and they've had 12 years of the gravitas of his coming into being and the messages they got from the angels. Like maybe they had even more sense, like, we must protect this special child. And also, we all know there's the significance of age 12 in Jewish culture. There's no mention really of a bar mitzvah or anything.
This
but
is
surely,
his bar mitzvah.
maybe that hadn't really come into being yet. But a boy became a man, I think, at age 12, sort of.
Yeah.
So maybe
for sure.
this is his bar mitzvah.
Fifth grader.
Then he has a sense of himself. I do love the idea of the learning in it, that he's there. He's not yet teaching. He's sitting among the teachers, but he's listening to them and asking questions. That's right. I think if there's anything that's like primary disposition for growing and developing and learning, you want your child you want to learn how to listen and learn how to ask questions.
Yeah. Totally.
And this is such a great iconic story of, growth and what we're all supposed to do.
Yeah. That's really good. I love that too, because it points up Jesus' full humanity. Mm-hmm. So I do not believe Jesus, the 12-year-old, was omniscient. I don't even know that Jesus, the 12-year-old, knew exactly who he was. Mm-hmm. I mean, who among us at 12 years old knew exactly who we were? He does have an inkling, right? Did you not know I must be in my Father's house? But when does Jesus actually know the fullness of his identity? I've always thought that might be when the dove, the symbol of the Holy Spirit, descends upon him at his baptism, and he hears the voice of the one he calls Father, saying, "You're my Son, the beloved, my beloved, with whom I'm well pleased," etc. Mm-hmm. Here, he has a great sense of who he is, but I don't think he's got it all figured out, and he's still learning. He's not sitting there dictating to the teachers. Mm-hmm. So, and I think this story of Jesus as a kid is very different from other non-canonical stories of Jesus the kid that we're still floating around in the orthodox circles. So like the Proto-Evangelium of James is one that I'm thinking of, and in that one Jesus seems to have superpowers as a kid. Like he points at people and then strikes them dead. It's like he says Avada Kedavra, and like in Harry Potter, for those of you who missed the reference, either like Avada Kedavra and boom, it's like Playmate, it's like dead. Yeah. And that's not what's going on here. It's pointing up Jesus, that Jesus has a divine identity and a fully human consciousness and mind, which has to grow into the fullness of the awareness of that divine identity. It's happening over time. He's not predicting the future. He's not omniscient. He's not teaching the teachers. He's learning the scriptures from them. And asking really poignant questions, because he was probably bright just as a human being. Yeah. But he's not omniscient.
Yeah, I mean, that's really well said, and I think that we would agree that you're right about that's what the scriptures are conveying here, and not what you were talking about is in some of the apocryphal gospels. Mm-hmm. I also say I've been out of seminary a very long time, and I sometimes go back, like, what can I remember teachers actually saying nearly 30 years ago? And one of them was a lecture in which the teacher was talking about this passage and saying, what does this say about Jesus and what does it not say about Jesus? What do the apocryphal gospels say? Why did they not make it into the canon of the scriptures? And one of the things the teacher said was, we have no evidence that Jesus was the best little carpenter around. Right. We have no evidence that Jesus was tremendously musical and could really sing the songs of David. We have no evidence that he was the best athlete, the fastest, biggest, strongest runner in his community. We have no evidence of any of that. So Jesus might be like the Rugrats that we all have, except he has a divine gift in a particular category. So that this is not like, my son is perfect, or what is perfect?
Above average, like he's in Lake Wobegon.
Yeah, like Lake Wobegon. I always say about New Canaan, all the children are above average. Yeah. Well, we have a school system that seeks to produce kids who are above average. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't have a public school that's ranked 26 in the country with a lot of passive people saying, kid, just go to school. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of parents zeroed in on what that kid's doing at school. Mm-hmm. But here we have a kid who's going to school.
Right.
He's going to school. His school's the temple.
That's good.
I mean, they had a system down because they went. The parents of Jesus went to Jerusalem every year for the festival of the Passover, and when he was 12, they went up as usual. So you get the sense, they all knew where they were supposed to be.
Right.
This was
Been
a
here
whole
before.
ritual routine. But
Right.
when he's 12, he sort of maybe embraced some independence and went his way. But I love how it ends up. It's really, to me, it's a passage. Well, maybe I'm projecting, being in the heat of parenting, but it feels like a passage almost more about his parents than about Jesus, and how
Oh, wow. Interesting.
they do their thing. They've raised him in this wonderful way. They've brought him along for all the festivals. He's in the tribe and the group, and he's comfortable in the temple. He's clearly been steeped in the tradition and faithful to the practices and everything. Learned so much, he's drawn to it. Parent would be very comforted by that. Yeah. And but they don't like him going outside the routine, But then he's still they don't understand him, but then he goes with them and was obedient. Then he was obedient to them. And again, his mother treasures all these things in her heart. So somewhere she's, kind of ticking off these interesting things.
What do you make of that?
It's my favorite line in the whole thing.
Which that?
His mother treasured all these things in her heart.
Yeah.
The other time that I recall her saying this is just a little bit earlier than this in chapter 2, verse 19. It's right after the shepherds have been at the manger and they've been communicating what the angels had told them when they were in the field watching their flocks by night, et cetera, et cetera. And it says there too that Mary treasured all these things in her heart. I think this is what Mary does when she meets something which she doesn't completely fully understand.
Yeah.
And I think that's nice. Really good model for us, because none of us fully understand God or God's ways or who we are called to be, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. We've been talking about all kinds of ignorance, variations on a theme of ignorance among the characters of the gospel stories, even among Jesus's parents. We've been at this for many weeks at this point, and I feel like we brought that up every single week.
Yeah.
Right.
And the answer is not to, I think, get frustrated or with oneself about one's inability to understand, to be self-chastising about the fact that one doesn't get it. It's just to do as Mary did, which is to treasure the mystery and just put it in your heart and wait for the fullness of it to be unveiled, whenever that is. Mary, in the different Gospels, you've got different people who are in the vicinity of the cross, in the vicinity of the crucifixion scene. But in those Gospels where Mary, the mother of Jesus, is one of those people, and it's often depicted in art that Mary, the mother of Jesus, is there. Right. Yes, exactly. I like to think that she, all of this stuff begins to occur to her again. Yeah. It's like she hears the message from the shepherds, and she hears Jesus saying, "Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" And perhaps that was great consolation to her when she was seeing her son dying in this particular way, because, not to get too Lutheran, we've been making fun of Lutheran Christmas hymns, by the way, because if you notice, most Lutheran Christmas hymns go straight from the cradle to the cross. It's like, little baby Jesus, meek and mild, suffered to redeem our loss. He's now in the cradle, but hey, let's put baby Jesus on that cross. Okay, so I don't mean to be too Lutheran here, but the story...
That was something.
Really
no offense
something.
to Lutherans, who we also love.
Yeah, we love the Lutherans. And the Lutherans are right about the fact that, this story is the infancy narratives have a kind of innocence about them especially when we read them in this way in the lectionary, and we don't have a Sunday for the massacre of the innocents exactly. Right. Although we don't always have a Sunday for the massacre of the innocents. That's not always an option. It is not always an option that every parish takes. And so these stories are actually still taking place under the threat of imperial power, forced migration, etc. They have some fear in them. But when we read them like this, I think we can we cartoonify them a little bit. And they're really stories that speak to real people in real situations of real distress. The story can stand up to whatever weird happens to be in our life or in our world. And I think that Mary treasuring these things in her heart is part of what gets Mary through the rest of the weirdness of her story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, Ray, I'm going to totally change the gears. You ready?
Go for it.
So, Jesus, 12 years old. We're in 20 minutes. Give us 5 more minutes. We have one story about Jesus as an adolescent. There's 29 years here to cover.
Yeah.
The lost years of Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus lived in India. His unknown life before and after the crucifixion. Okay. This story in Luke's gospel is a transitional piece. It goes from the infancy narratives. He doesn't go from literally 0 to 30. He puts a 12-year-old in between. Yeah. There's 29 years minus 1 week, because we got this in about a week here, minus 3 weeks.
Right.
The lost years.
What?
Esoteric literature all over the place. What was Jesus doing? What do you make of the whole conversation?
Oh, wow.
This is a fast one, Peter.
There's no preparation for these things.
Is this a test?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. You know, Jesus is like an icon at any fixed point where people project all kinds of things onto Jesus. Yeah. No matter what age he was, how people picture, is he alive now or gone? And is it now in the form of the Holy Spirit? I mean, we don't articulate much about Jesus versus the Christ, the cosmic, ever living before, was, is, and is to come. Jesus lived on the earth for a finite number of years in a finite body, which did go somewhere. And, I think people, we have so much teaching. We have so much rich wisdom and guidance and the promise of, always being with us till the end of the age. And at some point, we have to graduate into the mystical. At some point, we have to leave child Jesus, man Jesus, and jump into the cosmos with him. Wow. And I feel like the book like that, Jesus in India, it's a way of trying to understand, where did he get all this wisdom? How does it transcend Jesus in the temple interacting with teachers and scribes and scrolls and dust and roads and parents? And, he leaps into the cosmos, and we got to go there with him at some point. So I love a book like that, or the whole conversation, because I think it helps us glean out the wisdom of Jesus, the teacher, who transcends finite time and space and eras in history. So I'm a big fan of exploring those leaps of imagination that we'll never solve. No one will ever uncover the footsteps of Jesus embedded in some concrete in India. But right. I love the effort to draw out the wisdom.
Yeah, I do too. I'm less familiar with Jesus in India. I'm more familiar with Jesus in England. We're Anglicans and love the hymn Jerusalem, which is like the unofficial national anthem of England, and is an Anglican hymn set to music by one of my favorite composers, Hubert Parry. And it's a setting. The hymn is a setting of a poem by William Blake, where he says, "And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountains green?" And of course, the answer is like, well, maybe, probably not. Like, did Jesus actually walk in England? Very unlikely. Okay, that's a long way. England's a long way away from. From modern-day Israel, the province of Palestine in the Roman Empire, etc. Be quite a long way to walk for those ancient feet. But I think that, as you're saying, it's an effort on the part of these people to appropriate Jesus for themselves. Because, as you said in one of our past podcasts, the truth of the incarnation is that in the incarnation, God comes home to stay. And God comes home to all of our homes. So I'm fine with the English singing "Did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountains green?" I'm fine with people finding Jesus in India. It was Jesus among the pilgrims when they came to Plymouth Rock. I don't know. We don't exactly. Yeah, Peter's like, nah, not among the Puritans.
They canceled Christmas.
Right. We got our own Puritan here, Rob Schwartz, here in the background, one of our producers. So that's a little shot over the bow for the Congregationalists in the room. Jesus was not among the Congregationalists who came over here. But I think that the purpose of the hidden life, which is what the mystics like, I'm particularly thinking of Ignatius of Loyola, it talks about the hidden life of Jesus, and it's all the stuff we don't get between 12 and 30, right? The purpose of the hidden life is to help us actually to see ourselves in his life. Maybe he wasn't the world's best carpenter. Maybe he wasn't a prodigy at everything. Maybe he couldn't play like the scales on his piano, prodigiously at the age of 6. Maybe he wasn't all of those things because we're not either. Or maybe he was because you are, et cetera, et cetera. I think that strategically we're not given the whole story because somehow not being given the whole story is supposed to propel us into that more cosmic understanding, more spiritual relationship with Christ, the truth that God has come to all of our homes to stay.
Interesting.
What do you think? You were the one who posed it.
Oh, yeah, I posed it because you guys are brighter than I am, and I was looking for the answer. So I thought maybe I'd get the answer. Live is why you're getting the answer at the same time. I'm a monumental. I have no idea.
It's really funny.
I mean, this was a gift to me years and years ago, and I kind of poo-pooed it because I was in seminary, and I thought, well, we're not being taught this, so it can't be true. I stuck it on my shelf, and then I was like, well, wait a minute. Actually, it's kind of interesting. And they have all the highways that he might have traveled on. I mean, there's 2 major highways, one of which could have been that, and there's a lot of years in there. And then, of course, they do parallel sayings. I mean, you've seen all these parallel sayings, like Jesus and Buddha and the whole yogic tradition, Jesus as yogi. I've got about 12 of those books. I mean, a lot of people, all these traditions are looking to connect with Jesus. And one of the things that's incredible about Jesus, the angel says, behold, I bring you good news of great joy for all the people. And so all the people around the world, people of different religious traditions, are trying to kind of figure out how to do this with this. And the language of it comes to us so much in Hebrew. He was a Jewish man. And then it gets Hellenized with the Greek times that were there, but it doesn't mean that everybody doesn't want a piece of the pie.
Right.
And I mean, if you want to hear some really compelling talk about Jesus, the Dalai Lama, very compelling in his devotion to Jesus and his belief. I remember Dalai Lama saying once, Jesus is the only person that is not like every other human being. He's the only person that had the divine instinct ahead of time. The rest of us had to grow in that grace. And that, this is, to my mind, the speculative theology lived out in place. No footprint in the ground, but speculative theology, and I'm fine with that too. I think when we grip Jesus too tightly, we actually, it's like gripping a golf club too tightly. The golf club has a natural swing to it. If you grip it too tightly, it straightens it out, and it doesn't work. And that we can hold Jesus loosely because he can transcend our holding Jesus loosely. I think people that are totally freaked out by any statement that's made about Jesus that they don't believe, and they go, boom, I actually think they're doing them and Jesus a disservice. And I'm not to say that doctrine doesn't matter. I do believe it does matter, but I think freaking out at every turn is probably not really worthwhile.
You can build a house of cards out of the belief system, or out of the the narrative that we have. And if you pull one out and, Jesus might have fallen in love and, had a relationship, and then suddenly it's like, oh no, the whole house is going to fall down.
Oh, that was big when I was in seminary. I forgot about that. Yeah, that was big when I was in seminary. Jesus was actually married to Mary Magdalene and all that stuff. And then, all that stuff. But hey, I do believe in the doctrine and teachings of the church, and I just think they're sturdy enough to stand up to all this stuff.
Totally.
So, I mean, and you're the man of doctrine here.
Jesus is real. And that's the thing. And if we grip him too tightly, I think you're exactly right. We can lose it. His parents couldn't grip him too tightly either. Why do we think that we can?
Interesting.
Oh, nice.
And with that, we've run out of time for speculation. But I want to leave you guys with a Kevin McAllisterism. So we're still in the 12 days, right? Jesus has come to your home to stay. Don't kick him out yet, okay? Don't take down the tree before the 12 days are over, all right? It's over January 6th, okay? Celebrate the full 12 days and let it come. And Merry Christmas, you filthy animals. God bless you.
Peace be with you.